Thank you for coming back. I'm really grateful for the way that kept you on here. You could have one off. I want to say thank you again for a very insightful presentation. I'm going really nicely now, going to the next presentation, where we're all talking about right. And I, part of the Get Together journey, is thinking about how we think about how do we include people in the art, thinking about tokenism. Tokenism is a really big thing for me, why is that maybe interpreter need to be in the corner? Why? I don't get it. It's like a tennis match for me. So why we start thinking about lots of ways of how we can think about integrating aspects within the practice. Now, many years ago, when I was on my journey, I was invited to go to Scotland. And while I was up in Scotland, I came across an amazing company. They are called Ensemble, who is going to be speaking today. Now, what I love about Ensemble, they are a hearing and deaf-led company. So they think of ways of working together. So no one is down there, or no one is up there. They work equally. And they find ways of how to work together. And I was blown away about the work they were doing. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible team. Hearing artists and deaf artists working together, so language doesn't become a big problem. I could talk about them because I love them. I've been following them for the last 2 years all over the country, and I'm really excited to come all the way into Wales and love them. And they are Stephen and Erin. I would like to welcome you onto the stage and do your amazing thing.
Hello! Hello! Really lovely to see this room full of people. It's really exciting to be here today. My name is Stephen. This is my sign name.
Hello, I'm Erin, and this is my sign name.
We have a company called DH Ensemble, and this is the sign for our company. So it's a half D, a half H, going round in a circle. Before we get going with what we're going to talk about, we just and talk about who we are, we've got a question for you.
We do. What I'd like you to do is think, don't be frightened about a bit of audience interaction. I'm not going to ask you to do anything scary. I just want you to raise your hand if you are in the arts, TV, theatre, music industry, or visual arts. Can you just raise your hand if you're in the industry? Great, thank you. And keep your hand up if you specifically work in theatre. Hello, the one at the back. Now there's about 2, maybe 3, 4 of you. Okay. And keep your hand raised if you are not involved in the arts at all. You've just come to check things out today. Great, thank you.
Right, so I'm sure you can see paper dotted around on your table. We've got post-it notes, look a bit like this. Erin's holding up here. There should be pens as well. On your table, we want you to think about just one word or a very short phrase. Don't write an essay. Just your thought of when I say the word tokenism. What comes to your mind as what that word means? So don't put any names of theatre companies or any names of anything specific or your general experiences.
Don't do that.
Just have a think, write some words, brief phrases down, and if we can come and post them on the wall down the front, then we can all have a look at those words later on, and we'll read them out as well and share those with you.
Mm-hmm. Also, it doesn't have to be theatre specific. Just what your experience of that might be. So if you need more post-it notes, put your hand up and I'll come pass them out.
So you've got 3 minutes to write down those words, brief phrases. Don't go to too much depth, just what comes to mind straight away. Jot it down, we'll collect them up and stick them up. You're welcome to come to the front and stick those on the wall yourself as well. That's great. Okay, so thank you everyone. Just to try and get everyone's attention in the room. Thank you for your contributions. We got loads of words up there. It's really fantastic to see all those words. I'll pass over to Erin now. She's going to read some of them out. And just a few examples from what we've got up there.
So superficial, patronising, discrimination, empty gesture, recognised in a small way. We've got Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, which I thought was excellent. We've got wokeism, so being woke. Exclusion, lying, not equal, self-validation. Yeah, a virtue signalling. That's an interesting one.
So we asked you to do that post-it activity because we have our definition of what tokenism means. We wanted to get your perspective and see what it means to you. Now we've got all of those words up there. You can go and have a look later. I mean, they'll probably be on the floor or on the table by that point, as they are falling off the walls, but they're there for you to have a look at. So that word tokenism comes up again and again, and we see that word being used. And that was established in the 1950s, and it was used by Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, talking about black people's experiences and racial segregation at that time. It was saying that people were helping us, but you're still excluding us from that fight. In the 70s, a professor included tokenism as a concept in their work, and now we've come to the point where we think, what does tokenism mean? We've got a definition.
I can read that one out for you
which
if you
is
like.
going to be read out
here. Yeah. Ready. So, the Oxford Reference definition is tokenism is the practice of placing or promoting individuals from disadvantaged groups. For example, women, ethnic minorities or disabled people, and putting them into high-profile roles in the organisation. In order to give the impression that the organisation practices equal opportunity. In this way, while the token individuals may benefit personally, their role does nothing to help further the cause of the disadvantaged group which they represent or to which they belong. And then a much shorter, easier one. We've got the Merriam-Webster. And that says, it's the policy or practice of making only a symbolic effort.
So there's two definitions on the word tokenism.
So the purpose for us today to talk about tokenism is that really we wanted to demonstrate what we've been through ourselves.
So I'm Stephen, just to introduce myself. I'm an actor, a workshop facilitator, drama facilitator, and I work alongside director or a person who has an idea and wants to put that in place about how we can create integrated work that's authentic and real and represents real life. So part of my work is that, and that's part of my role within DH Ensemble.
I've mentioned I'm Erin. I'm an actor, theatre producer, BSL interpreter, and also I'm involved in DH Ensemble as an associate artist. So the other two aren't here today, it's just the two of us.
So DH Ensemble, as we mentioned before, and Johnny mentioned before, is deaf and hearing artists working alongside each other. There's 4 of us. There's myself, Sophie Stone, who's also deaf, and Erin and Jennifer Bates. So there's 2 hearing and 2 deaf working alongside each other. So there we are, 50-50, paving the way, encouraging equal work. And we want to create the opposite of tokenism and explore what that is. So we don't want to consider tokenism, we always are considering equality, how we work together, how it's 50-50 and balanced, and that is the ethos of our company. It's really important to us. It doesn't matter what the project is, it will always be, whether it's deaf-led or hearing-led, it will always be supported by the other.
Thanks, Stephen. Our company believes strongly that deaf artists and deaf creators have to lead the work. What we don't want to do is bring them in after the work has been created. That won't work. So we're always including, on a 50-50 basis, all of us from the beginning. And we've established ourselves in 2014, and we worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company, exploring Shakespeare translations into BSL, doing some R&D. And since then, we've done various performances and shows, and have always included spoken English and BSL equally, and using visual vernacular, projections, soundscapes, and so on. So we've been doing indoor theatre, Shakespeare, outdoor theatres, improv work, and Johnny's mentioned People of the Eye, and that was an autobiographical story in relation to my personal family. I have a deaf sister, and about what that was like growing up, and about being told not to learn sign language, and that we did anyway, and about our relationship. So thank you for the feedback, Johnny, on that. I really appreciated that when you came.
At the moment, we're developing the translation of a script that's based on Macbeth. Our version is having a deaf Macbeth and a hearing Macbeth. And also Lady Macbeth, there's one that's deaf and there's one that's hearing. But it all becomes entangled with each other and there's tensions between all those characters. So that's our next piece of work. And we've worked with an American company. There's a famous deaf educator, historically, and we're creating a piece around that. Last year, we collaborated with a Scottish theatre company called Solar Bear. And within that, we created a series of short videos about how best to work alongside each other as deaf and hearing artists. We'll show you later at the end some clips from those. So we're going to talk about some examples of tokenism now. So deaf tokenism in theatre, in film. I'll give you an example just to reinforce that definition. So think, oh, lovely, there's a play, we'll put one deaf person in it, and that's it. So for example, that's tokenism. So you just have one. There's no more deaf performers in it, just the one.
And when you bring in that deaf actor, their role is very minimal. That role might not have any personality or character or story arc. So therefore, the storyline stays the same. There is no impact of having a deaf character in the story.
A deaf actor might be brought in and think, oh, you know, they're being supported, they're deaf, they're up for them, well done, there's a deaf person there, and that might be the view.
Or you might have a deaf character, but the focus isn't necessarily on them. The main focus is about the hearing characters and how they benefit in the story.
a deaf person might be brought in and the story might be that they can sort of magically lip read all of the people around them. They've got absolutely amazing skills that they can lip read someone really, really far away, which isn't authentic to the deaf experience. It's not reality.
Got some laughter there. I think some of you may have been very familiar with that and have probably seen that quite a few times. Another example could be that, oh, it's Deaf Awareness Week, it's BSL Day, oh, it's the flavour of the month, oh, isn't it cool, let's just do something deafy and bring in a deaf person.
Or once a year, let's bring the deaf person once a year, and then nothing else the rest of the year. Where have they gone? It could be to do with funding applications. Oh, we want a little bit more in our pot. We're doing an R&D, some research and development, or we're doing a full show. Oh, great, we've got funding, lovely. The show finishes, and then the next show, oh, we're not going to use 10 people again. So there's no opportunities that carry on. So you've got the funding on the basis that you're going to employ a deaf person, and then you just do it as a one-off. So there's loads of examples of tokenism. We could probably talk about it all day. You probably have your own experiences and things coming to mind at the moment. Similar to how we've got the post-its on the wall. There's all different ways that we identify with that word.
We've talked about TV, film and theatre, but I'm sure you're able to imagine in your own areas of work some examples of tokenism too. When we talk about tokenism, we do want to remember what Rob raised about intersectionality, nicely raised earlier, and the relationship to this topic. If somebody is deaf, for example, they may well have other identities too. They might be a black deaf person, or a deaf, disabled, transgender man. So we have to remember that if you do choose to work with a deaf person, they may have more characteristics, and so therefore more opportunity for oppression.
So an example, in a deaf organisation, there might be a production, and that's lovely, there's lots of deaf people, there's lots of variety, but they might all be white. Where's that deaf person of colour? So we need a wider discussion about diversity and tokenism. Tokenism is just bringing one person in, and intersectionality needs to be considered, and that word intersectionality was established by Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined the word intersectionality. It's a really important word. If you want to know more about that and what it means, have a look at Kimberly's her quotes and her descriptions. If you Google her, that will come up. She's got some brilliant definitions. It's a really important term that everyone needs to be aware of, from Kimberly Crenshaw and her ideas and the way she coined that term. There are still problems that come up that we need to solve as well. Having, just a deaf person isn't enough. We need to consider people of colour and different representation. So that covers that more broadly.
Now, I was supposed to do that bit, but it was too much finger spelling. I just thought, Stephen, you could just crack on with that, do you mind? Because that's just too hard work in yourself. Because I thought I'll just thank you. Okay. So personal experiences then. It's you again.
So personal experience, linked to tokenism, the word we're talking about. I want to tell you a personal experience of mine. I've been an actor for over 13 years. Well done, me. Big pat on the back there. There was one TV comedy. I've been doing a lot of theatre, and there was an opportunity on TV. And the opportunities on TV were few and far between. So I thought, brilliant. I was really excited about a TV experience. I was asked to do it. Great, lovely. I was told what the role was. You need to come in and swear. So I came in, fuck off, and that was it. That was my role. That's all I had to do. And I thought, okay, well, are there any other things I can do to add some more humour and confusion and say, you know, I'm deaf, and be a bit more direct, and like, no, just want you to come in and swear and go off. And I thought, oh, maybe I could, you know, be a bit more cheeky to another person a bit later on, or, you know, sign word shit or something. It was a lovely experience, but I was there because I was just swearing and it was funny to have a deaf person come in and swear. And it felt tokenistic. It was an opportunity, but it didn't feel right. And it was a difficult place for me to be in because I should be happy that I got that opportunity, but I wasn't. So another anecdote, I was in a theatre company, it was lovely. I was the only deaf person in that company. Everyone else was hearing. And that happens quite a lot. So it, to me, felt quite normal. I went in and I was rehearsing, translating my lines into BSL. There was an integrated interpreter, I was helping them translate their lines. Other actors, I was teaching them bits of BSL. And I thought, okay, right, I'm doing all these things. And then I was asked to create BSL video to promote the show. So I was telling potential audiences to come, put it on Facebook, do videos to get people to come and see the show. I was delivering workshops. Then I was asked about going to interviews and talking about sign language and talking about the show. And I thought, okay, yep, that's all part of my acting job. And then as time went on, I thought, wow, that is a long list of roles and responsibilities compared to other actors. So interviews, line learning, doing the show. Why am I talking about all this deaf stuff on my own and pouring out all my energy, and I'm the only one doing it? So I did the job, and then it was like, oh, thank you for all your help, and that was that. But it was a huge burden that I took on my own. I was there, one deaf person, but I felt I was representing the entire deaf community, hard of hearing people, sign language users, all deaf people. I had to feel I could represent them all, and I'm just Stephen, I'm just me. I speak, I sign, I'm bilingual in English and BSL, but I cannot represent all oral deaf people or all sign language users. It was too much. The pressure really had an impact on my mental health. I was considering my identity, and I think, am I a deaf person here, or am I an actor? And I felt really torn between the two. And I thought, well, you know, I'm doing all of this because I'm deaf. That's why I'm being asked to do it. It's because I'm deaf. And it was really exhausting, really tiring. But the experience with the theatre company was really lovely. It was just that extra burden and that pressure was so heavy. And that was tokenism. There was no support, there was no care of well-being, helping me carry on. I know it was, people say, oh, I know it's hard, but it'd be good for the future because we're getting, you know, more people to come on. And that's tokenistic. Yeah, it's great, it's helping the company. But for me, that's tokenism. And that's my personal experience. It's a little bit of a negative one. There's some positive ones coming up later, don't worry, Erin.
I know this is going to be like a bit of a complaining shop now for a bit, but we've had a lot of great opportunities, wonderful jobs, but we just want to talk about some of our negative experiences at the moment. So I was asked to audition a bit last minute, like the day before I got the script, and I went off to the audition, and great, there was a BSL consultant there, which was fantastic, got the job, great. And then 2 weeks later, again, you know, a bit short notice, we started. And I came to the realisation that the company were lovely, the script was in English, and it was with no BSL, no deaf actors there, that's what they planned originally, but it was very hearing in nature, and they'd seen deaf actors on TV, they must have seen Rose or somebody, you know, and they thought, oh wow, wouldn't it be great to bring in a deaf actor? But they hadn't thought, actually, there are loads of consequences to that, positive ones, but there's a lot to be doing. You don't just bring in a deaf actor at short notice. So the BSL consultant said, okay, so you want a deaf character. How are they going to communicate with the other characters in your show? And the company thought, oh, I hadn't thought of that. They'll lip read, you know, and Stephen said earlier, the magic lip reading skills, all of the time, everywhere, all distances. And it was like, oh, well, maybe we can teach other actors to sign a bit then so they can converse. And it's like, no chance. I can't teach them to be fluent in 2 or 3 weeks. These actors are just, it's not going to happen. So they thought, right, we'll audition hearing actors who can sign. So, great, that's where I come in. And so at that point, we started rehearsals, a lot of extra work for that deaf actor and myself. The BSL consultant was also there for us to think about the story, how we might produce our lines in BSL. We had to really think about who our characters were, you know, all our arcs and our stories and our characters. And we were really lucky that the company were really open-minded to that and trusted us to have that time to amend the script appropriately. But through the process, the company said, oh, wow, we're really lucky that we brought you all in because the script has now become richer and we're better off. It's layered. And actually, it's been co-produced and is something more. Yeah, it started off quite tokenistic, but actually worked out well in the end. So that could be an example of tokenism, but it's also about it being tokenistic and evolving into something good. People have good intentions, you know, and I think we do take on a lot of extra work when we come into your spaces. And I do have something, another example, very briefly, it's a funny one. I went to an audition for a TV advert, and they said, oh, there are going to be 2 people, a deaf person and a hearing person, and it's an improv, so if you can just improvise a conversation. I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. So the other actor I met, I was like, oh, hi, and they were like, I went, hi, how are you doing? And they said, oh, I am not deaf. And I said, well, you're not deaf? No, I can't sign either. You can't sign? Why are you here? She had done a tester for an hour in BSL because she was learning it, and she'd said, I know what, and where. You can't, no, that's not, it doesn't make any sense. She couldn't do a what's, when's, why's, and was getting them all confused. So, of course, when I was in the audition, I was kind of like, I had to tell a story in sign language, and she stood there kind of nodding, going, what, when, where. Those are the only signs that she knew. And it was really awkward. So we'd done the audition, and the casting director said, oh, we've got another deaf actor coming in for you, so there'll be more opportunities, but I don't have an interpreter. So do you think that the other deaf actors will be able to lip read me? And I went, I don't know. How do I know? I don't know them. And it's kind of a really awkward situation because it felt very tokenistic. They wanted, in their advert, to sell something beautiful. Oh, people are going to be so inspired by this. Hadn't done any research, hadn't done any thought about what access really means. And I didn't take the job, by the way, just to say.
Yeah, with an attitude like that, it's probably best that you didn't get the job. Can you imagine? Yeah.
The money was good.
Yeah, well, money, but what other positives are there really? Is, you know, money or principles? We would say that, you know, bringing a deaf person or have that opportunity or have the money and the opportunity. It's the catch-22 really. You can go and have the opportunity and it be tokenistic, but then, you know, you're going around in circles. So now we told you our personal anecdotes. I'm sure you are having your own coming to mind, your experience of tokenism. You might think, well, why am I here? Why am I here? That's an example of tokenism if you're ever in that situation. It's important to talk about, and when we can see with the post-it notes, we can see lots of negative words. We've got words like fake, superficial, very negative language. However, of course, there's a lot of negativity around tokenism because it can affect a person's well-being. If you bring in a deaf person and, you know, they're there, that's lovely, but have you really looked at the culture of that person? Are you representing that? It sounds a negative thing, but people will say, however, wait, tokenism has positivities. And when they say that, I think, okay, why? Because it's an opportunity. Like, you could be in a big film in Hollywood, or you could be on TV, or be in a big theatre, you know, something with a big name. Before, there was no opportunities, and now, oh, we want a deaf person, oh, that's brilliant, I've got the opportunity to do it, I've got my foot in the door, I've had the opportunity. Maybe the role's a bit rubbish, you might just come in and say hello and then go off, and it's a tokenistic role, but it's the first step, it's a foot in the door, and then you might, by being there, change someone's mind and be able, now you're there, to add a bit of information, try and change their mind and their attitude, and then the door opens a little bit wider for more people. But on the other side of the coin, if a company brings in a deaf person, and then they think, oh no, we don't want to do that again, and then the door's shut, there's no more opportunities. But just a little tokenistic opportunity, and now it's gone. So that could be a problem. So there's a positivity with opening that door and trying to get that door open wider, but at the same time, it's not good because it's still a tokenistic opportunity, and we know everything hasn't been considered in the way it needs to be. So, tokenism, if we consider the long-term impact, is going to do more harm than good. If there's an opportunity, if I say no, that's tokenistic, they might just look for someone else and bring someone else deaf in. And if they do that, it will happen again and again and again, and the problem will get worse and worse and worse. And we'll always be disappointed by the visibility of deaf people and culture in the arts. So really, we need to take a stand. That is my opinion.
We've told you a little bit now about the negatives, but we want something a little bit more upbeat. How can you challenge tokenism? How can you improve things and be an ally? We'll give some ideas. Basically, don't bring in somebody from underrepresented groups like deaf, people, disabled, people of colour, and then expect them to do all that work. I say it's worth asking yourself some questions.
So when you bring a deaf person in, a disabled person in to work with, or a person of colour, or someone from the LGBT community, think about why are you bringing that person in specifically? What's the purpose of bringing someone in from a minority group, from an underrepresented group? Look at the surrounding team as well. So the creatives, the marketing team, production, actors. You've got one deaf person. Are there other deaf people in that team? Who has the power? Do deaf people have the power within that? Is there more diversity within that team to reflect society as a whole? Or is it just one person? It needs to have a balance. There needs to be equality there.
We're talking about theatre, arts or TV. Consider your representation as authentic. You want to represent groups authentically so that they can see themselves, because they will know, and they'll think, this programme or this show is not representative of us, and they'll disengage. So always think about how you're emulating your represented groups.
So that means more research. So look into the culture, and really, you need to really appreciate the culture of different people And everyone's different. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful world we live in. If everyone was the same, it would be boring. So embrace diversity. It's a beautiful thing.
When you're doing your research, remember two things. First of all, representation, as we talked about. Look into that, talk, make sure that you are being authentic in that representation. And then research what the team needs, that surrounding team. What support does everyone need? Ask everyone proactively. Because you'll never know somebody. You might see someone at face value, and you might not understand that they have a hidden disability or have caring responsibilities. Always ask your team what they need.
So within your organisation, make sure that the support is already there for deaf and disabled people to come in, and the support is there from the get-go. So make sure that structure is in place, because don't wait for a deaf and disabled person to come in, say what they need, and then make the changes. It's not an effective way of working, and it puts the burden on that deaf or disabled person. If you research properly, consider things properly, ask for consultation and advice, put everything in place, ready, you can say you've done all your research, you've put things in place, bring that person in and say, well, how do you want to work in this organisation? We've got this in place. And the deaf person will feel appreciated and respected, and it means that burden is halved and shared. A deaf person can't take on all of that. That's too much, and that might be the same for an organisation. So to share that burden is a good way of working.
If you're working venues, maybe you're a producer or creating programs, think about your program, think about what's included and what's missing. You might have provided one interpreted show. You might want to think about other things you could also include. Also think about your next project in advance. So if you've had a really successful project, will you do that again? Will you bring in the same people again? Are you going to bring in people with similar backgrounds, or is that done and dusted and you're moving on?
There are people out there, really skilled, deaf and creative people. Ask them for advice to make your work the best it can be and amazing. Tokenism doesn't mean representation. They are two very different things. Tokenism does not mean inclusion. Tokenism does not mean diversity. It's not a good thing. It's a good thing to talk about representation, diversity, inclusion. Some people confuse the two terms and say, we have representation, but really it's tokenistic. So please be mindful. Don't consider tokenism. Think deeper. Think what representation really means.
So we're going to show you a brief clip now from the project that we've created with Solar Bear Theatre Company, who are based in Scotland. This project produced 4 short films. We were showcasing best practice. We've done our research on the best way to work with deaf and hearing teams equally. We don't have all the answers, but we have created a video for you to consider best practice, and it's got some useful advice in it. It's a video called Working with Deaf Writer, but do remember, if you're bringing in somebody, you can't expect them to fit into the traditional normative ways that you work. Think more creatively. Think about how can we do things differently and work in tandem with them, because you're setting them up to fail otherwise if they're asking them to fit into your systems. Okay? We're okay for the video?
The script itself was written in such a way that it was very easy to translate the English lines into British Sign Language, probably because the writer themselves is fluent in both BSL and English, which is really refreshing.
I think there's a lot of questions around, especially recording BSL, because obviously BSL is very different from English. And B and I were kind of discussing about the ways of how can we record BSL into a script that we're being strict with. So, like, for example, one of the lines is about seriously. So normally in Scottish it's seriously, but because we had Jamie, who's an actor who's from Ireland, he signed seriously. B put that in the script to make sure that Jamie would use that sign. It's about how can we give freedom, but also making sure that these are B signs or words, and it's a lot of questions around how can we then take, if that was to be used again in the future, what's the best way for actors to approach the text and the directors to approach the text, because it is B's vision at the end of the day.
Okay, so you can see from the clips there, we're talking about how to work with a deaf writer. You might think, well, what's that got to do with tokenism? If you're completely ignoring tokenism and you're embracing diversity and representation, it makes things more creative, because if you open the door and make that space accessible for everyone and embrace the diversity and culture, it becomes a more creative space, full of ideas, like you could see in those clips there. It really has the ability to flourish and make good quality work. If you use tokenism, you don't have that opportunity to create really high quality work. The next thing we want to show you is another clip. It's just a brief one. The people involved in the project are advising the industry how to make work accessible and inclusive for deaf people. So it's just a short clip.
But one of the things that I took away was the experience as an actor of being directed by a deaf director. I felt like I had information coming at me in a really different way. So instead of it just being a kind of auditory English information, I was seeing it physically in space, and so it felt like that process of being directed and taking notes was really creative and clear and expressive.
Are you putting both languages as equal? Are you really, or are you putting that English script above everything?
the translation process is the big one, that there's not one translation, that you don't have an English script that has a BSL translation that you create. It's so open and fluid, and every actor in the room had a different way of translating, a different process, a different outcome. So I suppose it's about like knowing that and connecting to the possibilities in that it's not a dry sit down, read it, do it, but there's how do you play with that? How do you find the right way?
At the moment, it's often the case that BSL using actors are so far behind because you've got to do so much work to do the translation before you can even begin to approach the job of being an actor, thinking about character and relationship choices.
So how do you make sure your deaf directors, your deaf writers, your deaf actors are all empowered and are all on the same level and are able to play just as much as your hearing actors?
We've got the full clip on our website. There are 4 different ones. So one's about physical theatre, one's about writing, one's about translation, and then the general advice is there. So if you want to have a look at all the clips, have a look at our website, www.thensemble.com is .com. I hope you've enjoyed everything that we've talked about with tokenism today and how to make proper inclusive work. So it's time for us to end now. Thank you for your time. Hope it's given you some food for thought and provoking discussions through lunchtime. And I hope that it influences your companies, your workplaces, your organisations to think more broadly about including everyone and think about what diversity and representation means and how to balance it. And we want one day to be able to see that as a normality, not just, oh, there's just a one-off, there's just a tick box or tokenism. It's not a box ticking exercise, it's breaking that box, allowing that tick to fly away. I'll stop now. Okay, goodbye. Yeah, I could go on forever, but thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for Erin and Stephen for that big conversation about tokenism. Yeah, I would love to carry on talking about our shared experience of tokenism. And it's important. I can talk all day about my experience, negative experience about tokenism. But, you know, it's so wonderful seeing this happening in Scotland. Let's see this happening in Wales. It's not just theatre, galleries, it's anywhere in the art, you know. And let's just have this conversation. So, I think it's the right time now to have lunch. We're going to have the lunch, but please keep this in mind and you know, continue to have that conversation. Share your experience about tokenism or anything, whether it's negative or positive.